IELTS Writing: The Most Common Mistakes and Things You Should Know, Part 2. We'll continue reviewing our Part 2 of the most common mistakes and things you should know by reviewing parallel structures. Parallel structures are structures that follow the same pattern. So for example, when you write with a parallel structures, your writing has a pattern that is easy to follow. It helps make your ideas easier to understand to other people. So for example, in English, we have different types of parallel sentences. And the first one we are going to review today is a subject parallels. So for example, here you see a couple of sentences we have. And the first one shows parallel. So for example, play and study are two ways children can use a computer. As you see, play and study, words are in bold, and they are parallel in this case. And the following one is another example of parallel sentence. Playing and studying are two ways children can use a computer. So here we have, instead of, for example, play and study, we have playing and studying. So we added ing ending. And the next sentence after that is not parallel. So you'll understand shortly why. And here we have playing and study are two things children can use a computer for. So as you see, playing and study, so the first word we have playing with ing ending, and the second one study without it. So it's not a parallel sentence in this case. So you have to make sure when you're writing sentences and you are using parallel structure, they have to be consistent. For example, playing, studying, for example, dancing and playing. So you have to make sure you are consistent and adding ing ending in both cases. So that's what we call parallel structure. The following parallel structures we're going to discuss are verbs, adjectives, and passive voice. The first one is for verbs, and we have a verb parallel structure sentence here. I reached out my hand, grabbed the glass, and noticed that my watch was gone. As you see in here, we have highlighted words, or in other words, words in bold, reached out, grabbed, and noticed. And it's going to be parallel because all these words are in the past and all of them are verbs. So that's why this is a parallel structured sentence. The following one is not a parallel one, and here we have the village has grown and becoming more prosperous. As you see, has grown, it's a perfect tense, and becoming is continuous tense. That's why this sentence is not going to be parallel structured. And the same goes for adjectives and passive voice. So for example, for adjective, as you see, we have an example. Maple syrup is a popular and tasty treat. This is parallel because popular and tasty, they are both adjectives in this case. And the following sentence, maple syrup is a popular treat and also tastes good. So as you see, popular, it's adjective, and taste, it's actually verb. So that's why this is not a parallel sentence. And for the passive voice, it actually goes the same. So the house was painted, the roof was repaired. Parallel sentence, and not parallel sentence would sound like this. The house was painted and we repaired the roof. So as you see, was painted is in the passive voice, repaired is just a past simple tense. So you have to make sure when you are writing your essay, you are very careful with your parallel structure and you double check and revise your essay carefully. Now we are going to talk about punctuation, and the first one is the most common one. It's a full stop, or we call it period in America. So you can see the sign how it looks like. And full stop or periods have three distinct uses, so we're going to discuss that. The first one, we use period to mark the end of a sentence. So for example, when you finish your idea, you need to put a period. So the cat is completely black. So I'm a teacher, period at the end, right? And then the second use is to indicate abbreviated words. So abbreviated words, so it's something like the teacher will be John Smith, and then you see how we have B and A. So B, it's a bachelor's, and then period. A, it's a arts, bachelor's of arts. So it's a teacher's degree, and we abbreviate it as a BA in this case, and we put a period after that. And the last one we have, it's to punctuate numbers and dates. So for example, all assignments should be submitted by 6 period, 15 period, 21 period. So you see, like when we have numbers or especially dates, it's very common. So we use period in that case as well. And the next punctuation we have, it's a colon. A colon can be used to indicate that a list or quotation or summary is about to follow. So for example, buy these things, colon, a bag of peanuts, comma, 2 loaves of bread, comma, and a pound of steak. So do you see how we have colon, buy these things, and then when you have a list, here we have a list of 3 items, a bag of peanuts, 2 loaves of bread, and pound of steak. So that's when we use colon in the first case. The second way of using a colon is to separate an initial sentence, in other words we call it a clause, from a second sentence, list, phrase, or quotation that supports the first in a particular way. So here we have an example that I'm going to read it for you. Writing an essay is not easy, colon, you have to do a lot of research. As you see, after writing an essay is not easy, I have a colon, and then I have the second sentence, you have to do a lot of research. These two sentences, they support each other. The second part of the sentence supports the first part of the sentence. And this is one way of using a colon. And now we're going to talk about commas. So this is one of the most common and favorite probably punctuation for some students because they use them a lot. They overuse them sometimes. And there's some students who don't like to use them at all. So we're going to discuss how to use them properly and know exactly when and how to use them. So as you know, commas signal a slight pause, but not a complete stop. And I understand why they're tricky because they have a lot of rules. So we're going to discuss a couple of them today. So the first one, you need to use commas to separate items in series. A series contains 3 or more or similar items in a row. So here we have an example. The girls like playing golf, comma, reading books, comma, and riding horses. So as you see, this is items in series. We have 3 things. Playing golf, it's 1, reading books 2, and riding horses 3. So if you have a couple of things that you want to show, like you want to list in your sentence, then you need to use your commas. For example, if you have only 2, then in that case you are not using any commas. It has to be 3 or more. And second way of using commas is to separate 2 or more adjectives that precede and modify the same noun. It's not very common, but it can happen sometimes and you need to know it too. So here we have an example. The human eye is a complex, comma, efficient organ. So here we have 2 adjectives, and because we have 2 adjectives, not just 1, we need to use comma in between. And you have to note that you should not use commas when the last adjective in series is part of a compound noun. You can tell if one of the adjectives belongs to the noun and if you reverse the position of the adjectives. So here, for example, we have a sentence, whose red eyeglasses case is this? So as you see, eyeglass case is a compound noun. And that's why we do not use any commas in this case. So here we are going to discuss about an exception we have when not to use our commas even though we have some conjunctions. So for example, when a coordinating conjunction such as and or but, you guys remember your fanboys, connects a compound verb in a sentence, so in that case you do not add commas. So here we have an example. Jen dropped the contact lens and searched for 10 minutes but couldn't find it. So you see how we have these conjunctions and, but, and we do not use any comma. So because here we have only verbs, see, like we have searched before and, we have couldn't before but. So in that case we do not need any commas because it's not a complete independent clause, and that's why I would not use commas. So just be very careful and then try to remember this rule. And the last way of using commas, it's when we have 2 independent clauses, or in other words 2 simple sentences. So for example, Jen dropped the lens, comma, and she couldn't find it anywhere. So in that case, do you see how we have two complete sentences, Jen dropped a lens. If you see the sentence is okay by itself, that's why we call it independent clause. And the following one, she couldn't find it anywhere, so she couldn't find it anywhere. It's complete idea too, so that's why it's independent clause as well. So when you have these type of two complete ideas or independent clauses and you combine them with conjunctions, fanboys, then you need to put a comma before your conjunction. And yeah, so this is one of the most common rules we have for using comma. So try to remember, it's our compound sentence. The following punctuation we are going to discuss is apostrophe. Apostrophes are used in the IELTS essay for possessive forms of nouns and indefinite pronouns. So the first way we use apostrophe to show possession in a plural noun that ends with the letter S. So in this case, we do not add anything except apostrophe itself. So here we have examples. Students report, you say students in the plural form, and we only add S ending. So that means students have report, or we can say students report. The next one, the neighbor's dog and students assignments. As you see, neighbors, students, all of them are in the plural form. That's why we only add apostrophe. The second one is quite different. So here we add an apostrophe and S, letter S, to show possession in a plural noun that does not end in S letter. So for example, women, it's a plural form, and we add apostrophe and also S letter. So women's wages, children's drawings, gives us feathers. So this is a second way of using apostrophe. And the last one is using apostrophe to show possessive forms of indefinite pronouns. So for example, we have indefinite pronouns such as everyone, someone, anybody. So in this case, we can say everyone's paper, someone's wallet, and anybody's turn. So this is a third way of using this punctuation. And our final punctuation mark is parentheses. Parentheses are used to set off information within a text or paragraph. They always come in pairs, so make sure you use them both. And typically the words inside of them provide extra information about something else in the sentence. So remember to use parentheses, especially maybe in your academic writing task 1 when you're providing data or some numbers. It can be really useful. So here we have an example how to use parentheses, and I'm going to read it for you. The total number of cars, 10. As you see, we have number 10 inside of parentheses, and this is a total number. So for example, if you have a sentence that you forgot to include the numbers in, you can actually put the numbers at the end of your sentence, but don't forget to put a period after your parentheses mark. Punctuation. And the last thing I have for you in here is a little tip that I would like to mention is that you do not need to use exclamation mark and question mark in your IELTS exam, in your academic writing task 1, and writing task 2, because remember, both of your essays are academic ones and you don't really have a hook in your writing task 2. So just try to avoid using them at all so you do not make any kind of mistakes. And that's all we have, guys, for punctuations. And I really hope this course was very helpful for you and you learned a lot about writing sections of the IELTS test.